It doesn't matter if my cliff moment is going towards his direction. He gonna be like, okay, either the conversation needs to end because we're not getting nowhere. I'm going to Starbucks.
Do we actually think about on the dating part, how can I honor God? Or are we just so mainly focused on, okay, do I have the right outfit?
All I knew, to me, that's what marriage was. And I think that's why when it doesn't show up like that, especially those first 2, 3, sometimes 2 to 5 years.
Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationships
From surviving to thriving. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. So go ahead and share it on your social media platforms, to your family, to your friends, to your husband, to your wife, to your co-workers, to your church members, to everybody.
Today on TMC, we will have a very candid conversation about God and relationships. The first thing that came to my mind when I think of God and relationships was definitely romantic. And that's because I believe, and it's just all truth and honesty, I believe that even before we even knew that he was, him being the foundation of our marital relationship is what allows it to be what it is today. Because Cedric has always said it's not like I'm being faithful because I'm thinking about what someone else is going to say. I'm representing my father. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing to me. And it took us years to be able to articulate that and say it in that way. But it's always been like honoring the covenant. Like I'm going to, at this time I can articulate, I'm going to love his son the way he loves him. And I always ask God to help me do that and to support him and to make sure that this union honors him. And when I think about it, God and relationships from the foundation, if it is the foundation of the relationship has the best foundation. But most of the times, or a lot of times, what we see is that the relationship is actually founded on something else.
We're talking about God and relationships. God is the foundation of relationships. And I think it's hard to have a relationship when you don't know what a relationship look like. My relationship that I developed with God has helped and been a blessing to my relationship as a husband. When I really started studying and developing a relationship with God and seeing his love, because he loved me so much, I fell in love with him. And when I loved him back, he taught me love, and then I began to love her better. Not only that, I began to love my neighbor better. I began to love the people at church better. I began to love people I work with better. It just teaches a whole different perspective when for me, this is what happened for me. When I first developed a loving relationship with God, it made it easier to love people.
Yep. That makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And when you see it walked out, you definitely understand it because it's bigger than you, beyond you. It's beyond you. I always remember this because count in the Bible when I think about when Joseph was in Potiphar's house. And the wife was, she was feeling Joseph. And Joseph was like, this is the thing that my master has kept from me. And I'm not doing this because not only would it be dishonorable to my master, it's dishonorable to the master. Yeah. And that is honoring the master. Yeah. It's about what's producing. I am a child of God. What does that look like? I'm honoring the master. Yeah. My relationship of love with him exudes to my relationship with you. I can't say I have a relationship of love with him whom I've never seen, and I don't love you who I see every day. And I think that all of it works together because he begins to speak to you in those forms. This is not about what you're doing for her. It's not about whether she deserves it or not. It's about you, my son,
Yeah.
representing in the earth realm the relationship that we have. You showing everybody what our relationship is like.
And I think it goes back, and I love that key part, because that was the thought in my head, is that we are representing.
Mhm.
It's a representation. And it goes
Absolutely.
back to where God uses the very marriage and says, this represents the relationship that I have with Jesus, between
the
Jesus
church.
and the church.
Yeah.
And so it's so key, because when I think about representing, it's representing.
Mhm.
We're representing his love,
Mhm.
the love that we have. And I was part of a conversation earlier today, and they were talking about, how do you know you're really ready for marriage?
Mhm.
And there was different things. But I think Cedric said it the best, is, do I have an understanding of my relationship with him?
Yeah.
If you say that if you name yourself as a believer of Jesus Christ, then I think that governs all of your relationship. But first, God needed access to your heart.
Absolutely.
Then
Yeah.
once he has access to, then he can access all the relationships in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to, and I taught on this the last week in class, and we did a values exercise, the difference between an espoused value and a lived out and a practice value. And see, Cedric, what it sounds like, it translated into a practice value of that relationship with God.
Yeah.
Things shifted and changed for you.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, as we seek to represent God in every area of our lives, not just in my money, not just in my relationships, but I think about is to represent him, and it really changes things. But that conversation going earlier about, how do you know you're ready for marriage? And we talked about that, about there's so many different things, and things that variables and context. But the thing that stood out to me is, do I understand covenant? Do I understand covenant? Because if we're talking about God in relationships, he's a covenant God. That's why we're not destroyed. That's why he loves us. That's why when we do something that is contrary to his plan and purposes for us, that he's so committed to us because of covenant. And I think that if we're representing him in the earth, we have, and especially in a marriage relationship, we have to understand covenant. But how many of us go in, or you even buy a house and you don't understand covenant and contracts, and you like, what does that mean? It means that this and this and that for that covenant, or you have the deed to something. Do you understand the rights and the responsibilities that come with that? So when we're talking about covenant, there's rights and responsibilities that come with that. But that's God in our relationships.
I love that. Definitely he is. And he's always, if we look at the word of God, he's always honored every covenant. And that's exactly what we do as his children, as his seed, as the ones that are representing him in the earth realm. That's the attempt to make sure that you are honoring the covenant and seeing it. The greatest gift to me is seeing it above what we see in the natural. Because in the natural, it's like, okay, he's a man, I'm a woman. We come together, we create a life together, and we buy a house together. We have whatever, kids, you dogs, all that's all the natural part. But to understand the spiritual purpose. Why you doing like that?
I'm smiling because I remember when we first got married. It's kind of crazy. I'm thinking about it. When we got married, I mean, our goal was, you and me against the world.
Yeah.
We talked about
all the things
when we
that
wrote letters.
said.
We talked about the house and having a house and traveling and all these things. And that's what it was about. And I think it tied back to what I was saying. That's what my view of what marriage was, and I was wrong. I was wrong. I mean, that's a part of it. But that wasn't all of it. And that's all I knew. To me, that's what marriage was. And I think that's why when it doesn't show up like that, especially those first 2, 3, sometimes 2 to 5 years, when it don't show up like that, that's why divorce rates is high. Just like you mentioned, Jamila, about the covenant. I mean, he loved us so much. He made a covenant with us knowing we were going to break it. And he made it for us anyway.
Yeah.
And then he sealed the deal on the cross.
What really speaks to covenant with him and how much he loves us, it's when the scripture says in Romans, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I'm making covenant with people who are not even right for covenant.
They ain't even doing right now.
That's it. Right. And I think it goes.
That's a whole nother, that's a whole nother
Yeah,
podcast.
I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
when God is in your relationship, it goes beyond just your feelings. It goes beyond just the facts of the matter.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the fact was that we were sinners.
Mhm.
The feeling was that he probably was angry, but he honored the covenant. And I tell you, covenant will have you out here doing things where your flesh is screaming, don't do it. Covenant says, no, we're going to do what the responsibilities of covenant dictates for us to do.
And I was thinking about something that you said, I think, and I always think about this in regards to us because we were so young when we got married. And I think about exactly what you said. You know, in the beginning, it was the dream of what I was saying, the house, the car, the kids, the this, the that, the this. And then at a certain point, it became something different. And it's like when you grasp this concept and you really start, you like, wow, wait a minute, this is bigger than this surface stuff.
That was just surface stuff.
Yeah, this is bigger than this surface stuff, because for the relationship to be all that God intended it for it to be, it has to go beyond that, because variance and possibilities and how this can happen. You can look at so many people's lives and they may have had the same hopes and dreams and the surface ideas, but life led a different way. For the couple who 5 years into marriage, someone had a terminal illness, or the children that came and the child was ill, whatever it is, all these variances that goes along with it. But when it gets past the surface level and it goes to bigger than that, then that's when it's purpose and it's driven, and it's like, okay, this is something completely different. This is now us living out God's love in the world. For this union, it's a representation of how Christ loves the church. This union represents how God has grace for us. So this is how I'm having grace for this person. It definitely takes the relationship to a different level because the foundation is different. So I think over time it will, even if it starts that way, it will remove the surface stuff. And then you dealing with the covenant and where we go from here.
Yeah. It takes me back to what you both have articulated, that in the beginning when you got married, how didn't know what marriage looks like.
Absolutely,
your picture of marriage was based upon TV shows you watched growing up and all these other things, the drive of the house and the car and the things. But I think about people like myself who, you know, are on the unmarried side of the house right now, and how God has blessed us with the gift of time and the gift of information to go in and have a different perspective about how that. And I think that's so powerful because, you know, somebody was like, well, if you're in a marriage and you're coming to that situation, that's different, this information, but it's different in my selection of a mate, God in that, and that we can't discount God. We can't let him say, you could have those rooms over here, but this room of selecting my mate, you can't have access to it. Or you can, but it's like God wants access to everything. And as we said earlier, is that when you give God total access to your heart, then he has access to all your relationships, including the selection of a mate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it definitely puts you on the right path, because I always, and we talk about this all the time, I always say it, for us, it was, you were younger, you were different, you were figuring it out. But when you're older and you have now what we, and when I say older, I ain't say I said older than we were. You have the information that we didn't have.
Well, we got married. We got married almost 25 years ago.
That's what I'm saying.
The internet wasn't even.
That's why I just said the information we didn't have. There were no podcasts. I mean, I guess they did marriage counseling or premarital coaching then. I don't know. That we didn't even hear that. So we didn't have any of that. But now, like you said, Jamila, is definitely a gift. And so it's a gift to have someone to be able to tell you, this is where we did not know, but you now have the ability to start it off better. And not that, I mean, we started off good. That's just by the grace of God, because we didn't know. It's just like, I love you, you love me, let's get married.
But you know what? Yes. I think about this. I think even with us, we both had a biblical background foundation. We both had a reverence for God. Although my reverence was fear, but it was still, I mean, seriously,
It's
It
true.
was fear. I mean, it's
It's
like,
true.
man, I didn't want God to, but I mean, that changed around maybe 6, 7 years into our marriage. Fear is better than nothing at
It's
all.
nothing at all. It's, yeah.
I mean, I had fear, but I think going from fear to that love aspect, it just took me and God relationship to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fear worked. I mean, it's like saying it didn't work, but it, like say when you have somebody that's really lazy and they only working while the boss man is around. Boss man take a day off, they chilling. That's that. And if you're chilling when the boss man is not around, you're lazy with and without the boss man. So you really have a deeper issue, which is your laziness, but you hide it and you push past it just so you won't get fired. So it's like, I'm pushing because I don't want to get fired. I'm not doing this because I don't want to get a divorce, but it's like that whole perspective of when I develop a relationship with God, it changed everything for me. I mean, I started moving in a way, like, for example, the things I began to do in our relationship as a husband, it had nothing to do with Sean. Whether Sean show up right or whether she show up wrong, I show up right. So, but that was the time she show up wrong, I show up wrong. Vice versa. I show up wrong, she show up wrong. It's like when you have that relationship, you get that sense of peace. And it's like, just because somebody else act a nut, which either way, because we both have our days. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. She's not perfect. I mean, the time for both of us to slip on the same day. I mean, man, that's we just having World War Me going on. But
I love that.
But just typically on a typical day, when she's having that down day, I'm having an up day. So I don't go to where she at. I pull her to where I am at. Sean said this thing.
I'll be off the cliff. You
have to say that.
He does. And I think that's awesome. That's wonderful. And it's necessary. It's needed. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if my cliff moment is going towards his direction. He gonna be like, okay, either the conversation needs to end because we're not getting nowhere. I'm going to Starbucks, okay? Yeah. Or if it's someone else outside of the relationship that is, and now I'm on the edge of the cliff, now let me pull you back in. And that is the foundation of what's needed. Yeah. That's the foundation of what's needed. And I 100% agree. You having a relationship with God changes the relationship you have with people. And that's just a fact, period. I've seen it walked out. We see it walked out. And you are correct. I've thought about it sometimes, not as much, because my mind is like, we were young. There were a lot of things we didn't know. Most of the foundation I never even considered till I'm talking it out with someone. Yes, we both were believers. Yes, we both did come from a mindset of honoring God, even if the honoring him was from a place of fear or a place of reverence. And for me, it was reverence, but it was still there. But even with that, I still say my relationship with him still produces or has produced a different person all the time. It's produced a different person all the time, because all the time as we grow, as we mature, as life increases and changes for us, then it's also every level to represent him, every level to honor him, every level to be, for my relationship with you to be a representation of him in this earth.
Yeah.
For real.
I want to say this real quick, just for someone that's in a relationship. You're in a relationship, you're in a marriage, and let's say the marriage is kind of shaky right now. I encourage you. I encourage you to do what you do. Make sure you continue to seek your relationship with God. Focus on your relationship with God, because I promise you, when you show up better, it will make that individual, your spouse, your boss, whoever it is, it will make them show up better, because it takes two to act the fool. One person, I mean, seriously, one person.
It takes two to go to war.
I'm just chuckling because you always say that, and it's true. It is true.
I mean, because you look for. I mean, you talking trash or whatever by yourself. I mean, eventually you're gonna hush your mouth. You're gonna hush your mouth because you realize how crazy you look. But if I'm going back and forth with you,
it's feeding it. It's feeding
both of us. It's two fools now.
Well, and that's what it says, that when you argue with a fool, Proverbs says people wonder which one is the fool.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. And because what I keep hearing is that honoring God in whatever
Absolutely.
relationship,
Whatever.
because that scripture that you pointed out about Joseph, and man, he was good looking and he had good character. Yes, go ahead on Joseph.
Absolutely.
But it was honoring God. And it's like, you know, for those listeners out there who are unmarried, think about, how can I honor God when I go out on this date?
Yeah.
You're governed by a greater sense, and it's not to the individual.
No.
They reap the benefits of it.
Yeah.
But I'm honoring my relationship with God. I have a friend, and he says that, you know, he's like, I'm not cheating on my wife because I'm scared of my wife. I'm not cheating on my wife because I honor God. I love God. And that's a greater thing to that. And they just celebrated 20 years of marriage. And he's like, that's not a temptation because I'm going to honor God.
Absolutely.
You know, in the way that I conduct and how I carry myself in the relationship. And I think a lot of times we actually think about on the dating part, how can I honor God? You know, or are we just so mainly focused on, okay, do I have the right outfit? You know, we're so busy trying to be the person that they select that we forget to include God and say, God, I want to honor you. Even in this process of dating, I'm going to honor you. And that happens is you can't go away from who you really are, the core of you. Because I've been on a date before, real life, this is real life story. And that the guy, I think I've mentioned this before, and the guy told me, this is the first time we ever had a date, and he told me that 95% of his first dates end in some type of sexual contact. And I was like, oh, we got statistics now with that? And I said, well, this is going to be one of the 5%, among the 5% that doesn't. I still had to honor God. And even in that whole dialogue between him for the rest of the thing, because he was like, he begins to get really irate because he began to see that it's not going to happen. You're really not going to go along with this, that I still had to honor God. Even how I treated and respond to him, I had to honor him. Because in the middle of it, he was like, but you're being so nice and kind. It's like, I don't have to be mean to you. I'm going to honor God, even in my response to you, even in telling you, dude, this ain't going to happen. I'm still going to honor God. I'm not going to cuss you out or anything like that. I'm going to honor God in my reaction because I'm still representing him. And I didn't talk to him from that day forward, but he might remember that interaction and think back, man, she really displayed the love of God in that I can honor God even in my interactions when I'm dating.
And he will never forget that.
Yeah.
He
hopefully.
will never forget that. He won't.
Having an intimate relationship with God and giving him access to your heart, and that when your relationship with God is your priority, the way that you honor God shows up in all of your interactions in your relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a work relationship or whatever the relationship is that when God is the chief, when we understand the covenant that we have with him, it shows up that we're able to represent him in our interactions. And I think, you know, there's so much to this topic of God in relationships, but I think we're just skimming the surface of it, but it shows up in so many different areas, and it's so key.
When you were talking about in your dating and things of that nature, that's where it went to for me, because it's like the choices that we make, because to honor God, you making a choice. You even said that about your friend. That's a choice. That's because true. I mean, you have to make the choice to honor him. And that I think when we talk about God and relationships, that's what's important. The choices that you make to honor him, because it has to go beyond people. Because if it's surface level or just people, then it could be where you begin to give yourself a leeway to do something different. But when you make it a choice, work, relational, romantic, and it's all about representing him and honoring him, then yeah, you make different choices. And it could be something so small, but it turns into something big, because I believe the outcome is big.
Oh, get out of my brain. I was thinking that the outcome.
Yeah, the outcome is big. And that's what's important, because you like, how am I honoring God by not starting this conflict? But the outcome, because now it sets a tone for something. Yeah.
So maybe what we're really talking about is honoring God and how that shows up in our choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the choices in relationships.
And
ooh, and even should I continue this relationship? Because there's some friendships that don't honor God.
Yeah.
That God is saying that doesn't honor me. This relationship doesn't honor me, but we're still choosing to stay in that that friendship, but it's not honoring God. It's dishonoring him. Man, but that's a choice that now we're making.
What about when your job is dishonoring?
Oh-wee. Oh-wee.
Woo.
So now you have to choose between God and money.
What's that old James Cleveland song? No one said it was going to be easy.
Yeah.
But it goes back to, because when you talk about that, and I'm so glad you brought up that account of Joseph, because Joseph, all the stuff that we're hitting on, he hit on his job.
Yeah.
Because it's like he lost his job. Not only did he lose his job, he went to prison. But for the choice of honoring God. But this is the key. This is the thing I want us to, we're not honoring God because of the outcome of for us, but it's embedded in that when we honor God, God honors us. And so the very thing that Joseph, somebody might have said, oh, he lost that. Or somebody carnally thinking he should have just slept with her and he would still have his job. But God honored him to the second in command in Egypt because he put God before everything else. His choice was embedded that I'm going to honor God no matter what.
Even if somebody would say that, even if somebody would say, look at Joseph's situation and say, you know what? He should have just slept with her because he went to prison anyway. But if he would have slept with her, he would have never went to prison. Therefore, if he would have never met the cupbearer or the baker in prison, in which Pharaoh had a dream, and the cupbearer was standing right there and said, oh, I remember when I was locked up, when you put me in prison. That was a young Hebrew guy that interprets dreams. So if he would have did that, he would have still never got
the outcome again, because even though to the natural, we could easily see all the losses. He lost his job.
You can see the prison being lost. But it wasn't.
It was positioning.
It wasn't.
It was positioning. It was positioning, and that's the way we have to look at it when you're choosing to honor God. Because definitely in a marital relationship, sometimes people think that this is me taking a loss. If I do this or if I don't do this, this is me taking a loss in a relationship. You talked about at work. This is me I'm taking on extra, because it's not you taking a loss, it's the outcome. Because you're honoring him, and all it is, as long as you honoring me, I'm positioning you to where you need to be for the outcome. Ooh, man,
that could take up offering right now. Because when we think about that, and I'm gonna go back and hanging in there for our unmarried people. Even when we honor God in our dating things, and God is positioning us to meet the person that we are able to do life with, that will bring glory to his kingdom.
Sometimes we miss the right person by being with the wrong person.
See what and that's what I was just gonna say, because sometimes people feel like I'm this age or that age and I'm still single, but you are being positioned. You're being positioned. How many years between the time when he was thrown into the pit by his brothers and the time he became second in command? That didn't happen overnight. It was, and then you went from to me, if we would say it in our natural state, he had hit after hit after hit after hit. It was like he minded his own business. Here comes something else.
Yeah, that was 13 years from the coat to the palace.
Oh, thank you so much for joining in. Leave in the comments what's some of your key takeaways from this discussion today.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationships from surviving to thriving.
Bye. See you next week.